what I'm looking for in a founder is I'm looking for repeat exceptionalism. You may have never done anything business related before. You could have been dealt the crappiest hand when you were born, but somehow you made it to some of the top schools and performed very well there. You figured out how to support your family without having a degree. You're showing that you can persevere, you can figure it out.
What's up, everybody, and welcome to the newest episode of Demo Day, the podcast for entrepreneurs and venture capitalists, where we demystify the culture of joining one of the top accelerators, incubators, or VC funds around the world. I'm your host, Sean Goldfaden from Coefficient Labs, and on today's show, we'll be interviewing Marlon Nichols, managing partner at Mac Venture Capital. Without further ado, let's get into Demo Day. Marlon, thank you so much for joining us today on Demo Day.
Yeah, no, it's great to be back.
So Marlon, I got to start, we're a couple months out now from LA Tech Week, and it's always been really cool to see Mac part of the ecosystem of LA Tech Week, SF Tech Week. You guys have always been, in that ecosystem, but putting on the CultureHouse event and, integrating both Mac and CultureHouse and bringing everyone together, having the chance to go and participate and just be at your guys' event with you at Tech Week. It was so cool to see you, I think, just put together one of the most premier events of the entire LA Tech Week ecosystem. And so I just wanted to ask you, from your perspective, what was the most memorable part of that experience and that night?
Well, first of all, thank you. The team works really hard at trying to put together a great event, right? With the perfect mix of founders, investors, executives, etc. It's not easy work, but they pull it off. So I'm sure they'll appreciate hearing you say that when this comes out. My favorite part, it's really all of it, right? It's just watching the connections happen, right? Watching founders meet investors, watching investors connect for the first time or even catch up and figure out how they can do more together. That's really what that's the essence of CultureHouse, right? It's supposed to be a fun environment, right? The music is great, the drinks are flowing, there's some content, but it's really about the connections. So watching it come to life and seeing those things happen, that's the best part of it for me. That's why I do it.
And now having the experience now of, both investing in LA, being a part of startups that are in San Fran, in New York, in Africa, all over the place, what do you think makes the LA startup ecosystem different than some of the other cities or some of the other tech hubs? What have you noticed over these last, 5-10 years that you've been really invested in the community here?
Yeah, I think the thing that stands out the most about the LA community or differentiates it the most is that it's very collaborative. The investment community is very collaborative. And I think the reason for that is where this ecosystem started, right? I think, there were a lot of small funds and angel investors that would come together to, help a founder raise their seed round, right? Because there weren't funds of scale to just write a $3 million check or $4 million check, 5, 6 by themselves, right? And so it was a group effort. It was very collaborative. And so now you fast forward to today where you have funds like ours and Vika and Upfront and Bonfire and Crosscut, et cetera, that can write, those $3 million checks in a seed round. But there's a learned habit, right, of working with really good people that can add value beyond what you and your firm typically do. And so you've been on the journey with them before and you want to be on the journey with them again. So that element of or that spirit of collaboration just continues. And as those funds are viewed as the leaders of the ecosystem, that kind of mentality just trickles down to the newer players that are popping up in the ecosystem. And so you just have a very communal and collaborative environment here in LA.
What do you want to see more of next year? LA Tech Week in particular has been through such an evolution from year 1 to year 2 to year 3. I think this was by far the biggest, most spread out year, it still felt like what was so cool about Culture House and your event was that it felt like the most like central place of all the events I went to. It was like the people there, the community there, and just everyone being together at one like amazing location, the food, the music, like everything you guys did was so cool. What do you want to see for next year, whether it's for your own event personally or just for the community at large? How do you want to continue to see LA Tech Week evolve over these next couple of years?
Yeah, I think for Culture House specifically, I want to see people that I haven't seen there before, right? I want to see some investors that have never been to a Culture House. I want to see founders that we're not familiar with, right? Come in and have the experience and join the community. The community now is about, I think, 20,000 people, and so I'm interested to see that grow, and what kind of new participants, how they will impact the community. From a broader LA Tech Week perspective, I think it's much of the same, right? I want to see more participation from venture firms. I want to see more collaborations across events, right? More firms doing events together, and I think we did a decent job of just kind of double clicking or really emphasizing the economies or the sectors that are really strong for LA, like aerospace and defense, e-commerce. Like they were various events that really focused on those things. AI is everywhere, but there were obviously AI events. I think those are the things that I would like to see, and just like to watch it keep growing. And even for folks that aren't from LA to come in and join the experience, because the founders that are raising later stage funding, like it would be great to have some of these multi-stage firms be more a part of of the process and the environment.
Now, Marlon, before we dig deep from into what founders and investors can learn from your journey and how you've navigated, I think just to set a little bit of context, I talk about Culture House, I'm talking about Mac Ventures. Could you spend just maybe a minute explaining to the audience that has never been to a Culture House event, or this is the first time maybe they're hearing about, like, what is Culture House? And then we can kind of transition into Mac and the sort of just general startups that you guys work with and look into. I think I'd love to produce a little bit of context and then start to kind of pull back some of the layers of the onion, if you will.
Yeah, sure. So, Culture House, I think we are going on 10 years old now. It's an events company that I co-founded with an entrepreneur that I invested in many years ago, back when I was at Intel Capital. A guy named Rodney Williams. His company at the time was Listener. He now helps run another startup called Solo Funds, and it's a fintech. Peer-to-peer lending marketplace, essentially. But we would go to various conferences, and there was just a void of events within the event, if you would, like whether it be a party, whether it be panels, etc., that felt diverse in nature and looked diverse in nature, right? And what I mean by when I say diverse, I don't mean like everyone there is black, right? Or everyone there is Latina, right? I mean you have white, black, Asian, men, women, all, it just feels very inviting, right? And fun, but also it is productive because while being diverse, it's from a racial and gender perspective, it's also diverse from a what do you do perspective, right? So you have the investors, you have the founders, early stage founders, you have later stage founders, you have corporate executives, you have government officials, you have celebrities, professional athletes, etc. All just like mixed into this this thing, and you're just watching the magic happen. And so we've been doing this for about 10 years, and really it's about just creating these environments that can be productive for a very diverse audience on the backdrop of other conferences, right? So LA Tech Week is the one we're talking about now, but we also do it as a part of Art Basel, South by Southwest, Afrotech, which has become probably one of the largest gatherings for Culture House. Martha's Vineyard during the month of August, as well as we're looking at Cannes, France this year. So,
wow.
Yeah. So that's what it is, and how it was founded, and it's just grown tremendously over the years.
Now, this is going to sound like a really silly question, especially, I feel like, for anyone that's, I don't know what the right age number is, 30 years old, 40 years old, whatever it is. Like, we grew up going to conferences, going to events, like that was just like part of at least my experience in coming up in startups. And then during COVID, everything kind of went away. There weren't these in-person events. And I feel like a lot of the high school, college students that were in COVID, they never really got through that process of like going to events and hustling on the weekends and learning about all these different in-person activities. And now we've got, the 20 somethings that are coming up. Maybe they haven't actually been to an event, or they don't understand why is it so important. I have social media. I could just, build my following online. What sort of advice do you have for the younger, gen, or even people that have been to events, but, it's been a couple of years and they've kind of written them off? Why is it important now to come back together again? And what, where do you see that playing a role in startup founders, just growth in general?
Yeah. You can, listen to podcasts, you can research things on the internet, but what you can't manufacture are serendipitous moments, right? And that's what you get at live events, right? So you don't know who you're going to be able to run into and have a really interesting conversation, and where that conversation might go from there. That's why you go, right? You might end up in a crop circle where you're able to learn from folks that are doing similar things to you, or maybe at a similar point in their founder journey as you are, right? You can't manufacture that online, right? I guess you could have things like Discord and and go to places like that, but not everyone is going to be there, and not everyone's going to be as open as if they when they meet you in person and you have you spark a true connection. So that's what I would say. It's and listen, it's not for everyone, right? You have some extreme introverts out there that going to something like that is just too overwhelming, and that's fine. But I'd argue that I've met some really interesting people at different events, and the one piece of advice that I would give to them is just figure out which conferences, which events make the most sense for you, which ones you think you'll be most productive at, get the most out of, see the people that you want to be around, etc., and try to attend those.
Yeah, it's so funny you said that, because I'm having a flashback of our interview together from a couple years ago, where you were talking about how you thought about your MBA program, and how like you didn't just apply to every MBA program. You were really intentional about the specific programs you were going to apply to and why you were applying to them. And like, it seems like you've always been really good at reverse engineering these amorphous things, like going to an event and just asking the most logical question of like, why am I going and what am I trying to get out of it? And I think that's such good advice, because sometimes you can just get thrown into like, oh, I'm supposed to go to events, but not taking the time to really say like, am I in the right fishing pond? Is this the best use of my time, energy? And it can almost be like a crutch where you're like, oh, I'll just go to the event, but you don't end up actually moving the puck forward. That's really, really interesting. Now, transitioning into just Mac Ventures again, I think like a lot of this podcast today, I want to talk more from the context of like, advice you're giving to these founders, these investors, but I still think it's important for people to know who you are, who your fund is, the types of people that you want to resonate into your ecosystem. So maybe talk a little bit about Mac, the types of startups you like to invest in, and, potentially like the size checks that typically are like the right fit for what you guys are doing.
Yeah, so Mac is a seed stage venture firm, right? And seed is defined in a number of different ways by different people, right? For us, it typically means that you've built a product, you're ready to take it to market, or you've recently taken it to market. In most cases, that's what it means for us. And we like to invest there because our backgrounds, consulting, talent management, politics, and leading kind of business development and implementation for a startup. All of I think the through line between all those professions is that you've got to be able to tell a story that really resonates with a specific audience, right? It's sales, it's go to market, right? And when a company is at what we define a seed company as, or in that stage that we define as a seed stage company, that's what they need to do. They need to take this product that they built and bring it to market. And so, given our backgrounds, we believe we're really good at helping companies to craft that story and figure out how best to tell it to a very specific audience and take that product to market. So that's why seed for us. We're a generalist fund, right? But we like to say we're a generalist fund run by sector experts, right? So I started my professional career in software. So most of the deals that I will do are related to software, right? It could be deep tech software, it could be B2B software, software for consumer, right? My partner Mike has carved out a space within aerospace and defense and really hard tech, right? So that's
which LA is now starting to really blossom in.
Yeah. So we do a lot of deals in those areas, and then my third partner, Adrian, he's more of more of a true generalist. So he's kind of outside of the box of me and Mike. But what he's really good at is identifying talent and picking founders that can transcend, right? Generalist fund, but we have some core areas that we gravitate to, right? So I mentioned fintech, health tech, aerospace, defense, deep tech. Generally, we're jumping into energy now. We're looking at some fission companies and things like that, marketplaces, logistics companies. That's where we spend most of our time. A little bit of our time is in kind of the media and entertainment space, platforms, and we have some Web3 companies as well. But that's where you can see us spending most of our time in terms of a sector. Geographically, primarily North America, but somewhere around 10% of our investments will be Africa, LATAM. Right now, that's meant Mexico, and I think we have a couple companies in the UK.
Yeah, I'm excited to ask you later on in the podcast about your philosophy around investing internationally. I think at least for me as a founder, there's always that thought around we can expand to Europe or to these places, but then you get into the logistics of it and you're like, wait, how the hell are we actually going to do that? So it's really cool to hear how you've navigated that, and I'm excited to ask you more about it. To kind of come back to that founder side, you mentioned that once a founder has built a product, you're really there to help them bring it to market and help facilitate that sort of growth. When you have a founder, maybe they're even a little too early for Mac, they're too early for you, and they come to you and they say, hey, I have this really great idea, but I don't know if I should try to build the idea first and then try to raise money, or if I should try to raise some money and then build the quote unquote idea or the product. What do you say to them? I would imagine that that comes to you in different realms, where some people have this amazing idea and then you ask for them to show you some product and they don't have it. What do you say to someone that's kind of in that chicken or the egg? Do I leave my job and go and build this thing, or do I try to raise money first while I've got the job and then build the thing?
Yeah, I wouldn't be so bold as to tell someone what to do with their life, right? What I will say, though, is that ideas come a dime a dozen, right? Everyone can have an idea. What you do with that idea, if you can bring that idea to fruition, now we have something to talk about. So I'm not going to advise, I don't know what your life situation is. So I'm not going to advise you to leave your job and go build this thing. But if you want someone to take you seriously, you have to figure out how to build it, or some instance of it, right? You've got to show that you are serious about this and that you're capable. And before that, you're just like everyone else walking the streets.
And so what signals show a founder, not the VC, but show a founder that they're ready? Because when you're really early, that sort of like, I don't know where I should be going, but I feel like I'm onto something, but I'm not exactly sure, because what is important to one founder maybe is not as important to another. So in your opinion, what signals should early stage founders be thinking to themselves that let them know, okay, now I'm ready to go and get investment?
It depends on risk appetite, honestly. There's some folks that just, they wake up and they have conviction, and that's enough for them to go in and go off and create this thing, right? There are other folks where, they might need to prove that there's a market here, right? So they find ways to test whether or not, there is a market for this, that their target customer will want this, right? It's hard to say, right? It's personal choice, it's risk appetite.
It's a great answer, because it is really case by case, and everyone has a different appetite, and like you said before, different personal means for how long they could go, in that direction. When it comes to founders at the seed stage, a lot of what I've heard is that VCs bet more of like the jockey, not the horse per se, where like they really are betting on the founder, the team that they're building, because they know that like the idea is going to keep changing and the product will change and evolve over time. But how important is that founder's long-term vision versus like, where we're at today pitching the VC? Like now, 10 years ago or 20 years ago, having a 10-year roadmap was part of the game, but now things are moving so quickly. Do you like seeing a longer term vision like that? Do you think it's more important that founders are coming to you with a tighter, 1 year, 2 year, 3 year map? Like, where do you want to see the specifics of some founders' vision in today's, society?
Yeah, I've got to believe that the thing that you're attempting to build can be a multi-billion-dollar outcome, right? For the venture math to make sense, I have to believe that. And so it's not my job to figure it out. It's the founder's job to show me that there is a path towards this thing. And yeah, I've got to believe that. Now, you said something that is also true. Like the jockey is the most important piece of the equation. But, you don't hire a jockey if there's no horse. Right?
Yeah.
So, you got to believe that this founder has what it takes to build this thing that they're attempting to build. But also, if the market shifts and the thing that, we all agreed that we were going to build is no more or cannot be, I also have to believe that this founder has what it takes to figure out what that thing that he should or she should be building is.
Yeah, you
Right.
you used a term like a Mac down Mac truck down
cul-de-sac.
Yeah, cul-de-sac. Exactly.
Yeah.
Like just blow through the walls and just make shit happen. How do you personally develop a framework to evaluate these sorts of startups? Like, have you over the years have a system in place? Is it change every time? Like how, with all of the moving pieces that are constantly happening, how are you able to take all of these uncertainties into your own mindset and sort of parse them out? Do you have any sort of framework that you run founders through when you're investing them or thinking about investing in them?
There's a lot of things. And it just comes with time, right? You see a bunch of things. You see a founder archetype and you kind of in your head, you're like, okay, this person's is probably gonna do these types of things, right? And if it's not appropriate for them to do that, do I believe that they have the humility to listen to why they shouldn't do that and change course, right? It's just things you learn over time. But what I'm looking for in a founder is I'm looking for repeat exceptionalism, right? Like you've been outstanding at something or many things several times throughout your life, right? Because
Not just business related.
it doesn't have to be business related. You may have never done anything business related before, right? But I don't know, maybe you were
Won the spelling bee, or like the accolades have to show exceptionalism.
and it's not necessarily even accolade. It could just be living, right? You could have been dealt the crappiest hand when you were born, but somehow you made it to some of the top schools and performed very well there, or you figured out how to support your family without having a degree, and did well, and just and everyone has what they need because of you, right? You're showing that you can persevere, you can figure it out, right? And building a company is one of the hardest things that a founder will ever do, a human will ever be able to do. And without that level of like conviction and commitment and resilience, it's never going to get done, right? So that has to be there front and center. I've got to believe in this founder, right? From that perspective, I also have to believe that they're qualified to build the thing that they're trying to build. So, are there, is there domain expertise here? Is there just professional experience that you've seen something on the job and know this problem in and out, and just have a novel solution for that problem? Or maybe it's something you've lived a great portion of your life and you really know that problem.
Taking care of a family member with whatever that thing might be, you just have an intimate knowledge around it.
Yeah. Like, what are all the issues? What do people that are in similar situations, what do they have to deal with every day? And how to solve that for them, right? Like, I'm looking for things like that. Why are you uniquely qualified to build this thing that you want to build, right? And then I'm looking for salesmanship. Doesn't have to be the CEO. It's got to be someone on the founding team, though. But you have to show me that you can sell, because to build a company, you have to sell to prospective employees. You've got to convince them to come on this journey with you, because no one's ever built a company by themselves, not a successful one, right? So can you attract high quality talent and convince them to join you? One, can you actually sell a product, right? Whatever, companies sell things, right? Whether it's services or things, they're selling something, right? Can you do that? And then third, can you fundraise? Like, I don't want to be the only investor on the cap table, right? When things get difficult, I need to be able to share the burden. When you come across a problem that I haven't seen yet, I want someone else in that room that can say, oh, you know what? We lived through this such and such time ago, right? So they got to be able to sell. And then I think there's got to be some level of technical aptitude on that founding team as well, right? A lot of companies used to say, well, it's a tech-enabled company. We can outsource the building of the tech, right? But the problem is, if you don't have technical aptitude and knowledge in-house, you have no idea if what is being built for you is actually the right thing. And a lot of companies end up in tech debt because of that. Right. Yeah.
So, which maybe for those that are unfamiliar with tech debt, which is something that I only found out about a couple of years ago once we started developing our own products. But can you just explain, what is tech debt for the untechnical founder that maybe is what is that?
Yeah. So I don't know. Let's say you have to build this widget, right? And you hire this team from wherever, and they're the technical team, and they're building the widget for you, right? And you're spending all this money on it, right? And then it comes back, and it doesn't solve the problem you need it to solve, and doesn't work how you need it to work. So now you have to spend more money to then go and fix that. And guess what? You're taking money from you budgeted a certain amount, right? For the technical development, right? You budgeted a certain amount for sales. You budgeted a certain amount for this and that and the third, right? And now you're having to pull from another place in that budget to continue to finance something that should have been built the first time around.
Yeah. And that can also include things that are like not specific to that piece of technology, but things that tie into it, where it's like, oh, you now need to host it on AWS. That will be a charge. Oh, you may need to, find an integration into a data partner. That may be a charge. And so these things can take on a life of their own for maintenance and updates. And I think that's definitely, a piece that you don't think about when you just get in, because you are like, I just want to build this thing, but you don't understand, essentially how some of these additional costs can add on. One of the questions that I had was around blind spots. And so when you are looking for excellences, constantly looking for excellence in the founders that you're investing in, sometimes these sorts of people, they're very, they're maybe not always self-aware, but they're confident, they're aggressive, they're trying to become a founder, and they don't necessarily have clarity around their blind spots. In people that you've seen that are hyper successful, hyper excellent in these areas, what are blind spots that you've maybe just seen from a distance that high performers could be more aware of? Is there anything that comes to mind that you've seen as almost a trend or something that people can take note of?
Lack of humility.
How so?
So, you're like, in some cases, it's great to be bullheaded and to run that Mack truck through that cul-de-sac, right? And in some cases, you've got to take stock and you've got to say, should I be going through that wall?
Yeah.
Right? Or do I need to go around the corner? Like, is this product that I'm building, do people actually want it? Like, what is the market telling me? Right? Are you willing to listen to that, or are you just gonna plow forward? Right? And you've got to have a level of humility, which doesn't mean that you always listen to the advice that you're given, or that the signals that you're seeing from the market in this point in time are always going to be the same, or even that they're correct. Right? But you've got to be willing to truly take it on board, analyze it, and make a decision from there. And the companies that I've seen like really fail and fail pretty quickly is because they're not able to do that. Right? They're not able to, they're not willing to just listen. Right? Again, you don't have to comply, right? But you've got to listen, analyze, just take it on board. That's probably the biggest thing. The other thing is a reluctance to letting people go that aren't a good fit for the organization, or are not producing in the way that you need them to produce, right? We're all human beings, and I think most of us tend to be nice people, right? And so if someone's doing okay, they have a family that they're supporting off of this salary, et cetera, it's a hard decision to let them go, right? But if they're not if they're not a part of the equation that's going to take this company to the next thing, they have to go. You've got to make room for someone that can, right?
Do you feel like the best leaders that you've seen can take that player on the field that's the wrong fit or not doing it right in that way, and then make them the best fit or get them to that place? Or do you think the best leaders realize it's not a fit out of the gate and they're just more about speed and making the decisions quickly? Does that make sense?
I think it depends on the stage of the company. At certain points in the company, you don't have time for someone to learn how to do this function, right? They got to do it, right? Even if they don't know how to do it, they got to learn how to do it quickly, right? So I think oftentimes what you're doing is you're hiring for both experience and potential in the early stages. And the potential is that, this person is, doing some engineering work right now, but we think they could actually lead engineering teams, right? And so we're on the first 10 employees of the company, right? And so, this person's a great coder, right? But I know that, as we have to hire folks, she can hire, folks similarly talented as she is. And then she can actually lead that team, manage these people, right? So you're looking for, the skill set that you need today, but also that they can easily move into the skill set that you need them to have tomorrow.
Which is one of the hardest parts, at least for me, in growing, Coefficient Labs. And I've heard this with so many startups, is that the team that gets you from 0 to $1 million is different than the team that gets you from 1 to 10 and 10 to 100. And like, there's evolutions of companies, and certain people are better fits for different stages of a business. And it's certainly, part of that journey is seeing like which of the teammates, like you said, like to move up in stages, whereas those that like to kind of be at those different levels. With AI being such a hot topic right now in 2025, is it a complete like automatic no if the teams now are not using AI in their product flow for you? Like if you meet a founder and they've got some solution, but they don't have any AI as part of it, is your first response to them, hey, this looks great, but like integrate AI and come back to me? Or are you still in a space where like there are companies that are still agnostic from AI and can still be very fundable companies for you?
Yeah, AI is a tool, right? So what first and foremost, I'm looking at the business, right? So what is this thing that you're building and that you're going to sell? Who needs it? Do I believe that, there's a massive market for it, right? So that's number one. Now, could you leverage AI to maybe go a bit faster? If that's the case, then why aren't you? And what does that say to me about you as a founder, right? But no, it's not a
black and white.
Yeah, and it's not a must-have in certain cases, right? You could be the pioneer of this space, right? And so right now, what you need to do is you need to get a product out the door and get some customers using it and loving it, right? And then once you've done that, the next thing is figuring out how do I do this cheaper, faster. And maybe that's where AI comes into play. Now, if you're a founder and you're like, oh, I'll never use AI, or I don't see any value in it, well, that tells me that you're not necessarily the most intelligent founder.
Now, I would imagine that before you invest in a startup, it's a little bit of like dating, where like you're kind of getting to know each other, the vibe, you're learning about their problem. And then once you give them money, it's almost like you're like moving in together a little bit, and you kind of are able to get more under the weeds. And regardless of whether it's before you give them money or after you give them money, how are you able to assess if they're being efficient with your money? Like I can understand the idea of someone like wiring me or someone, here's $1 million, here's $5 million, but how do you actually know, oh yeah, they are either using my money efficiently, or I should invest in them because they're using money efficiently?
Yeah, you kind of try to weed this stuff out during the courting process.
Okay.
Right. Where
just with questions that you ask.
Yeah, you're just asking questions, getting to know them, getting to know how they think. You're always going to ask, use of funds and what their plan for that is. You want to see, a budget at least for the next year, right? Which usually will tell you how they expect to deploy the capital that they're raising, right? And you can have very pointed questions about that use of capital, right? Like why are you putting 20% in marketing and 40% in engineering and this and that,
and
right?
Just let them answer.
And, yeah, right.
Right.
And it's got to make sense, right? And then so now you're like, okay, well, they put some real thought into this, right? Once you've done the investment and now you're an investment partner, right? And that's the thing you look for too, in before closing the round is how are they viewing you, right? Are they just viewing you as a means to an end, like, okay, I need this capital, so let me go get some capital, or are they looking for a thought partner, right? So not someone that's going to or a team that's going to tell them what to do, but a team that's capable of offering advice and assistance, and do they want that, right? And because for me, at Mac, we're very active investors. We get involved with our founders, right? And so we're not just gonna be, call it dumb money or whatever, right? Or just uninterested investors, right? Because there are firms that's what they do. We're just gonna write this check and you go off and do what you do, and we'll see you at the end of this thing. Like, that's not us, right? And so we're teasing that out as we're meeting founders, right, and going through this process. Now the deal closes, and what we usually do is we set up monthly check-ins, right, where they could just be half-hour meetings, right, where we're just talking about, okay, what's going well, what's not going so well, where do you need help, and also share the company vitals. So is your burn rate where you said it was going to be at? Are you spending the capital in the places where you said you were? If not, then why the shift, right? So you just
putting little data points on the map and just seeing how the lines are connecting themselves.
Yeah, and just having a conversation with them, and just making sure that they know that you are paying attention, and you're paying attention because you want what's best for them and what's best for the company.
This also may be a very stupid question, but what should founders do right after they're done pitching you, or after they've had a good meeting or something? Like, again, think that they've just had their first VC meeting and they're like, holy shit, I think it went good. What's the next step for a founder in your opinion? Like, what do you want to hear from? What do you want to see after a good meeting, if anything at all?
Whatever we talked about it being. Right.
Okay.
I think most investors will tell you, like, what's next. Right?
Got it.
Or what information they, what additional information they require. Right. And I would just say, make sure your follow-ups are both quick and comprehensive. Right. The other thing is, like, we'll be having a conversation, and we could come across a topic where you don't have the information available in the meeting, right? But you have the information somewhere in the company, or on some drive,
it's like,
somewhere, or
pull
something.
It back or something.
Are they taking notes? Are they sending that back to make sure that you have the information that you need to help you make the decision as quickly as possible?
Now, when it comes to you assessing, like, a startup that is in a really fast moving industry, like, whether it's AI or like, there's so much verticalization happening now. Are there any, things that you're looking for in a fast growing market? Is there any way that you can assess a founder's capabilities, knowing that there's so much competition? Is it everything you just talked about already with, like, their excellences, or how can you look for that diamond in the rough when it's such a muddy water?
Well, competitive landscape is definitely one of the things that you're going to evaluate, right? If it's, a super crowded space, right? Why do I believe that this company is going to be able to, crawl out of that mud, right? In all likelihood, they probably are not going to be, right? So unless they are doing something that's just fundamentally different, or gives them some, like, extreme edge, it's unlikely that we're gonna invest in such a saturated market.
Is there anything that they can do in those instances to proactively address those risks? Is it just the way they talk and they vibe with you, or is there a level of preparation or research that could be done, like in those situations where you're like, I know I'm gonna get them with these questions, not that you're trying to get them, but it's crowded, you're going to give them, and then they answer it just perfectly. Like, what is it, do you think, that they did? Is it just their knowledge of the space? Is it their preparation, that they knew you were going to kind of go in that direction? How can founders that are in a busy space almost get ahead of it?
Yeah, I think understanding the competitive landscape is the best thing that they can do, and being able to articulate, very clearly, why they'll, transcend that competition, right? Or why they'll be just competitive in that space. And it's got to be believable, and there's got to be something novel about either the technology or the approach that they're taking, right? Or they're providing something that is essential to these customers that no one else can provide, or can provide in the way that they can provide it.
Now, transitioning a little bit into the venture side of things, like one of the things that you mentioned was that like sales is at the forefront of everything in a startup. But I don't think a lot of people realize that sales is really like at the forefront of being a venture capitalist as well, because you have to sell LPs, you have to sell founders and why they should work with you. And so just going back to like your early career, what were some of the strategies, if any, that you used to help build early relationships with LPs? Like, how did you get started when, you're just like, I don't know any people? So how did you kind of build a framework that enabled you to get your first 1 or 2 or 5 or 10? And how can other people take that kind of advice to heart for themselves?
Yeah. I mean, sales is really all about relationships. It's relationship building, right? Like, human nature is to want to work with, want to spend time with people that you connect with and that you like. And so the best thing that I did in the early days was go to people that I trusted, that I knew my targets also trusted and liked. And once I got the people that I trusted to believe in what I was doing, the next logical place is, well, who should I talk to next? Who do you want to put me in front of to also share this, right? And so now you're coming in warm and vetted, right? And so now I have the opportunity to help them understand why the person that sent me here believes so strongly in our ability to win.
Now, Ethan, who is off camera sitting here, he's from Indiana and came to Los Angeles. And so he doesn't necessarily have a network of people that he's grown with that have then become his mentors in his trusted ecosystem here. And so for someone that has no network, maybe they move from Africa to America, or they, whatever it might be, how can one navigate the kind of ability to start to get mentors and start to get people like you're talking about without feeling like I'm just taking from them, or I'm taking their time, or like I'm just asking Marlon to make me intros and he doesn't even know who I am, or there's no trust built? How can someone that doesn't have those people start to develop it in their 20s or their 30s so that 10 years down the road they have it? Do you have any suggestions for people that don't have a network and really they're just starting from ground zero?
You just got to do it. The world is getting smaller and smaller because of the internet and mobility and technology, generally speaking, right? So you got to know someone that is, attached to finance in some way, and you just got to weave and get there. That's literally all you could do. I mean, sure, my partner Mike is great at the cold outreach, right? So he'll make a list of institutional investors and craft emails and send it to them, and some small percentage of that massive list of folks that he will reach out to will respond. So I'm not saying that the only way to go is to get these soft introductions, but if you can't get those soft introductions, well, you've got to go guerrilla on it, right? You got to figure out how to get in front of these people without being a pest. You've got to find ways to communicate the value in what you're building and what you're offering. And that's
one thing you said last episode was like, be a VC before you're a VC. Like, if you're able to start to either pass deal, oh, hey, Marlon, like I saw that you were interested in software companies and like I met this team and I don't know if they're, so, that's certainly a way. And another thing that you mentioned that for me has been like by far the best next step is to make a list. I think sometimes it's so overwhelming when you don't like, I don't know who I'm supposed to talk to. Whereas if you like go into your social media followers and you make a list of all of your followers, or you go to your LinkedIn connections and you see who you're like, it's usually like starting to make a list is the thing that starts to drive attention to it. And I think that's like really good advice for people that think they don't have anyone, but they really maybe just aren't like, they don't have visibility into it.
Yeah.
When it comes to your decision-making framework, how do you evaluate deals that you like decide to pass on, you know, even though they might be the right fit for you, or like there's something about it, you end up passing it along? Is there, you know, anything that you've seen that, you know, ends up just not being a good fit for Mac, or that, you know, you end up just passing along the grapevine, if you will?
Yeah, I mean, we can't really do those generalities, right? Or generalized things like that. There's certain industries that are harder, right? So like I've seen a lot of education technology companies, right? It's hard to find a winner in that space. And you know, I have one in my portfolio, Wonder School, and they continue to do well. But you know, I had one other at some point, and that one failed, right? Yeah, so just given how difficult it is to build that kind of a company, you know, something has to be extraordinary about the opportunity for me to move forward. Or you know, I see a lot of music centric startups, right? And you know, my first co-founder in my first fund, it was from the music industry, so I learned a lot from him in terms of, you know, what success would look like. You know, what are the kind of the deficiencies in the music industry, and what would need to be created in order to do it. But even understanding that, it's hard to build a music technology company that scales.
Yeah.
And so, you know, so that would make it, you know, difficult, right? So we have the areas that we continue to invest in for reasons, because we've found success there and we feel like we know what the formula is, right? And then there are areas where you know, we've tried and just don't feel as comfortable investing in those areas. It's, you know, it's trial and error. You're looking at market dynamics, a bunch of things.
Has your due diligence process evolved over time? Like, you know, right during COVID, it seemed like it was like, you know, a free for all, like so many companies were getting invested in. And then after COVID, we started to move into this recession, and now it's like we're starting to come back. Like, have you evolved your due diligence, or has it been even more a reason to like stay in your kind of zone and not let all of the craziness interfere with your decision making? Has there been an evolution with, you know, how funds have been evolving, startups have been evolving, AI, all of that? Any change that you've seen in how you decide on what companies you want to invest in?
I think the biggest learning is like, don't skip steps, right? If a deal is moving really fast and the market is throwing a bunch of stuff at money at a company, don't skip steps.
What's the underlying message behind it, or why? Like why?
You'll miss something. You'll miss something, and that thing that you miss may be very important to the decision making process, right? So you got to find ways to do it faster in kind of those accelerated environments, but go through your process, right? So that's I think that's one thing. The other thing is, you know, do your own work, right? Like, you can't just trust the diligence that another investor says that they've done, right? Because who knows if they would have asked that one essential question that you're gonna ask, right? You don't know. So it's like you can leverage their work, but don't fully depend on their work. I think those are the things. And then well, COVID also taught us that we don't have to meet everyone in person that we invest in, right? We found ways to, vet personalities, which is what you're, when you're in person, that's what you're doing. You're saying like, do I like this person, right?
Totally.
Do I want to, be around them for the next 7 to 10 years, right? Do I think that in tough times we can have, difficult conversations and it be okay? Like there are ways to suss those things out without, going to dinner or, a few times or lunch or drinks or whatever you want to call it. Yeah. There are just other ways to do that. And the other thing is just relying on off balance sheet references too. You want to make sure, you're doing as many of those as possible. Like who do I know that knows this person that they didn't write down as a reference? What can I learn from them?
Now, you've had the chance through Mac and just all of your businesses really, but specifically over this last, several years, the chance to grow talent, to oversee, more junior investors and junior teammates. And what have you found for yourself to help you help your team succeed? Like what's required of a managing partner or the founder or like the head of a VC fund? What do you think is required today to support their junior team to really like help the whole fund evolve?
I think you put people in position to succeed. So one of the best things that we could have ever done is hire our COO, who leads operations, and now she has a 1.5 people that report to her. So there are things that that she's put in place that has been able to free up our associates and principals so that they can focus more so on deal sourcing and evaluating opportunities, because they don't have to do some of the operational things that we needed them to do before. Because the partners couldn't do all those things by ourselves. The other thing I think is just sharing the load. So each quarter we deliver financial statements, and we write a very extensive letter to all of our investors, which captures how the bulk of the portfolio is performing. There's specifics about each company, why we're excited about them, why we're worried about others, etc. And instead of the three founders and general partners writing that, no, we're having the folks that work side by side with us on these deals take portions of those updates, and we basically crowdsource that letter. And what they're learning in this process is, how do I communicate to LPs? So as they graduate, their levels, and they get to a place where they're a partner and they have to spend time with LPs. This is something that they've been doing for a while. It's now kind of innate, right?
That was actually my next question as we get to the end of this podcast. It's been really awesome, Marlon. I so appreciate you, man. What are some of the most common mistakes that new fund managers make in managing their LP relationships? Like, what are some blind spots that you've learned along the way now that maybe you wouldn't make that same mistake if you were a new fund manager now?
Not spending time with them.
With the LPs?
Yeah. Like you spent time with them during the courting process, right? Like you've got to figure out a way to keep doing that. Like just sending them information and catching up with them when they ask is not good enough. Like you've got to we've got investors in the Midwest. We got to fly out there and and go to dinner with them and and see them and continue to deepen those relationships. So I think that's the biggest thing. Don't show up when it's time to raise your next fund, right? Keep them in the loop. And then I think they have a wealth of just knowledge and information, right? Because they're not only seeing what's going on with our fund, they're seeing what's going on with all of the other funds that they're invested in. So like leverage them as partners, just like we want our founders to think of us as investment partners. Like we should think of our LPs as investment partners, right? Here's a challenge that we're having. The founders are the GPs are debating, this thing. What have you seen in other firms? What would be your recommendation, or what are the things that you would avoid here, right? So just leveraging them in that way, I think is also something I think a lot of newer GPs don't embrace enough.
Marlon, this was honestly a really, really cool episode. I loved going a lot deeper into some of these questions. I'll finish this podcast just like I finished the last one. What are you most excited about right now? What's got your attention? It could be personal, it could be business, could be anything in between. It's 2025, January, end of the month here. Where feels like things are moving quick already, but what's got you most excited for this year?
Man, in terms of the work stuff, I am really excited to see what people build in the intersection of fintech, AI, and intersection of fintech and healthcare. I think there's some amazing opportunities that are just starting to bud. So really excited about that. Personally, being here in LA coming out of January, I am excited that the fires are under control and that resources are being deployed to the many who have been significantly impacted by that tragedy.
Marlon, thank you again for making the trip across town to visit us. We really appreciate you. Can't wait for your next Culture House events and everything Mac has going on. We love you guys. Just want to say thanks again. And to everyone watching at home, I'm Sean Goldfaden from Coefficient Labs, and this is Demo Day. Peace, guys.